it feels great to be back after a couple of weeks away with the NCAA tournament, Texas being eliminated. And now the transfer portal is heating up. Guys, we are back on the Hook 'em Hoops podcast for the Field of 68 with a new co-host, myself, Tommy Yarrish, and Zach Davis joining us for the first time. Zach, how's it going, man?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell everyone a little bit about yourself. You obviously go to University of Texas. What do you do here? I mean,
Yeah, I'm a
why do you like
journalism
college
journalism
basketball?
major. I love sports journalism. I write for the softball team for the Daily Texan, but of course, basketball runs through me. Big fan of the sport. I used to know every Final Four when I was like 5 years old, so I've been prepping for this podcast my entire life, Jason, pretty much.
I love it. And Tommy, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. Happy to have our guy Zach here. And look, Jason, we were kind of talking coming into this episode. Man, the Texas staff made they cut out our job pretty easy for us today. It was quiet in the portal, and then 3 commitments on Sunday night. Very impressive stuff from Rodney Terry and his staff, and I know that we'll get into that here in a minute. But very happy to have Zach on with us. Big time ball knower, and he comes from a
Big time.
basketball family, so. Welcome to the pod, Zach.
Big time.
Appreciate
It's
it,
going to be a
Tommy.
lot of fun with the three of us, especially with the portal heating up. Just off the bat, Texas still has 3, maybe even 4 roster spots to fill. And so with, Cam Scott decommitting over the weekend, Nick Cody is still in the mix. Trey Johnson's obviously going to make it onto campus, we hope. But Texas is adding players all over the place. The big news on Sunday was the addition of, first off, it was Jason Kent from Indiana State, the big man. He had a great year last season, shot the ball at an extremely high clip, 68%. He is a maestro in the paint, good defender, plays at a fast pace. He will be able to adapt to the Texas style of play really quickly. And then a huge surprise, someone who no one even knew had visited. We don't even know if he's been on campus yet. Tremont Mark, Arkansas's leading scorer last year by way of the Houston Cougars, is a Texas Longhorn. This is a guy who averaged 17 points per game in the SEC. He is plugged right into the starting lineup. Super exciting ad for Texas. And then the cherry on top, the point guard from the Indiana State Sycamores, the fast-paced, elite defender, Julian Larry. All 3 players have 1 year of eligibility remaining. Tremont Mark may be able to get an extra year of eligibility as he only played 7 games in 2020. But Texas added a bunch of good players on Sunday, 3 potential starters. Zach, let's hear your thoughts first on who Texas added.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of better timing for the podcast. I think Rodney Terry knew we were doing this today, so it's probably why
He
he went out
listens to the
last
show.
night.
We're convinced of it that Rodney Terry
Yeah,
listens to the show. So, Coach, we appreciate you making our job easy.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, Jason, you said it terrifically. You got 3 guys, I expect to make an impact on the team. A big impact coming from Tremont Mark. I can see him slotting right into the three spot. And then I want to talk about Julian Larry, who on this team last year. The offense struggled from behind the arc. They were not a great three-point shooting team. IT Horton, some guys that were coming in, they didn't click. So for Julian Larry to come in shooting a 45% clip from deep last year for a solid Indiana State program, it's just good for Texas to have him in and bring some versatility. Maybe back up Tyrese Hunter. It's hard to assume his role at the moment with how young the portal is, but I mean, bringing in these guys, they all have their own kind of abilities to them. Mark is kind of a do-it-all guy. His three-point shooting increased tremendously last year. He led the team in three-point percentage last year. He's ranked 22nd on 24/7 for all the transfers. So it's a big pickup, no doubt.
Tommy?
Yeah, really across the board, I think it was a pretty solid day for Rodney Terry and his staff. Julian Larry was kind of that was the last commitment of the day, and it was one that we maybe weren't expecting to cap off the day, but it's certainly a guy who has a lot of upside. And I saw that a friend of the program, Fran Fraschilla, tweeted out some nice things about Larry. This is a guy who, Jason, you and I talked about going into the offseason. Texas needs a true point guard. This is a guy who can handle that task. He's a fantastic passer, averaged nearly 5 assists per game last season for Indiana State. And he can knock down the three-point shot too. Texas wants a lot of three-pointers, and they want shooters. And they've got a guy in Larry who can do that for you, is really good, especially from the wing. He's got a great first step when he attacks the basket, so a lot to like there. Kind of had an up and down season scoring wise and shooting wise throughout the course of the year for Indiana State too. So you'd like to see some consistency, if anything like that. But certainly somebody you can be happy about. And his teammate Jason Kent. When I was watching some of his tape yesterday, I wrote down always in the right spot at the right time. This guy just knows where he needs to be on the court. And you can say that for all three of these guys across the board. Experience is what stands out about these three additions. Guys who have played a lot of basketball and who have played it at a high level. I thought Kent was really good as the roller on the pick and roll. I can really easily see a two-man game with him and Tremont Mark, because Mark is a guy who is great as the ball handler on the pick and roll. And we saw it a lot at Arkansas last year. We would do that. Arkansas loves to do that under Musselman. So Mark has long arms. He can knock down shots from anywhere on the floor. The jump shot looks a little weird, but it goes in, so it doesn't really matter. Zach mentioned how he shot, I believe it was his career high in 3-point percentage last year with Arkansas. So, want to see him stay healthy, of course, but man, three really solid additions across the board. I'll tell you what, boys, Tremont Mark surprised the hell out of me. I did not expect that coming at all. He's a Dickinson guy. He went to high school in Dickinson, so it makes sense that he wants to come back home, but that we heard no buzz on that whatsoever. Like, that was not on anybody's radar that I know of, at least. I didn't hear about it.
I didn't either. And I've got a comparison here. This sort of feels like the A.D. Mitchell of Texas basketball, where someone with, talent to the highest degree, who has performed at a high level, just wants to come home, and there's an open roster spot. And, Max Abmas was great last year, but it was sort of hard for him to take over games because of the height difference. Texas has a guy now who can take over games and is 6'6" at the guard position. I think that's fantastic. He's also a good defender coming from that Houston system. I am so excited about the addition of Tremont Mark, really about all three of these additions. But some other news to go through. First of all, Cam Scott decommitted from Texas, got out of his national letter of intent over the weekend. That was a surprise to some in the moment. And then Tremont Mark committed the next day, and it made sense. And so Cam Scott out of the picture. Don't expect him to return to Texas. He may say that he's committing or considering Texas, but I don't expect him to return. With that said, Trey Johnson, Nick Cody appear to still be firmly committed to honoring their NLIs, which is good. Obviously not a guarantee, as we know from recent years. Also, Dylan Mitchell and Tyrese Hunter, Rodney Terry went on Kirk Bohls' podcast for the Austin American Statesman. I don't know the name of the podcast, but can't name it off the top of my head. But he said to Kirk Bohls that he has met with both Dylan Mitchell and Tyrese Hunter, and that the ball is in their court. And if they want to return next season, my guess, judging on what Texas did yesterday, is that neither player is going to return. Dylan Mitchell has been rumored to hit the portal for a while now. I think he'll probably announce that this week. And then Tyrese Hunter, maybe he just goes pro to make some money. I don't know if he'll gain much out of another year out of college. But, we'll see. I'll always root for Tyrese because he's been a hard-nosed player for Texas, and it'd be nice to have him back. But with Texas, who they're recruiting, it's hard to imagine him on next year's team. Guys, any other thoughts on who could be leaving, who's already coming in, before we get into some fun stuff on who could be coming to campus this week?
I think Tyrese Hunter, I saw Mitchell and Tyrese are both doing their draft eval, whatever the kids call it these days, before they actually make a decision. But how I see Tyrese Hunter in the system next year, I see him slotting right back into where he was, if not almost kind of having a heightened role. I feel like part of Tyrese's struggle last year was trying to find the balance with when to take the ball, when to give the ball to Max. The backcourt was a struggle in the dynamic of the, whose turn is it to shoot? But next year you got a true one in Tyrese, you got a true two in Trey Johnson, you have a do-it-all guy that's going to start at the 3 in Tremont Mark, and then you have your 4 and 5 is not the most decided. Shedrick's coming back, but I think Tyrese Hunter's best opportunity is staying at the 40 acres. I mean, I just think he's gonna have a lot
But
more.
but can't you see him transferring to Wake Forest and averaging like 18 points per game?
Oh yeah,
I
for
completely
sure. I
agree.
mean, he was he was what, Big 12 rookie of the year at
Yeah.
Iowa State. Like the guy, he has the capabilities to play, and it might be a system problem with him at Texas, or maybe it's, I feel like part of Dylan Mitchell was a confidence problem, so it might be a confidence problem for Tyrese as well. But um, I'm a big fan of not just for Texas sports, but for all of athletics, is to stick it out and really prove yourself when you go somewhere. So it's just about what he wants. I mean, he's a tough kid. He's been through a lot, I feel like, in his 3-year career. So, um, yeah, I mean, as you said, Jason, it can really go in all different kinds of directions.
I'll say a couple things on Tyrese Hunter and Dylan Mitchell. Starting with Tyrese, I I was talking with a friend of the program, Guy Frazier, the other day, and he brought up a really good point about Tyrese Hunter. When he was at Iowa State, he was the Cyclones' premier scoring option, and that was a big reason why he thrived the way he did, why he had that Big 12 Freshman of the Year season. When he came to Texas, though, he automatically becomes maybe the second or third scoring option behind. In his first year, it was Marcus Carr. You could say Serge Rice, too. And then this past year, it's Max Asmus, Dylan Dessou. So that role seems to me, guys, like it's not really the best for him, if that makes sense. Like this guy is meant to be a team's leading scorer. He's meant to take 15 shots a game if that's what it takes, and get teams double-digit points every single night. And he has not had that role at Texas. They've wanted him to be a supplemental scorer and a good defender, which he has been at some points. The inconsistency obviously is the biggest question with him. I think it's better for him if he goes and becomes a primary scorer at, like Jason said, a school like Wake Forest, for example. I just think that's what's better for both parties. And then Dylan Mitchell was just a big question mark. I think Jason Kent's addition is the telltale sign for me that this may be leaning towards Dylan Mitchell hitting the portal, because Kent's your double-double guy, and Mitchell was the double-double guy for this Texas team. So that to me is kind of the sign that maybe they're making a change. And I think you could say the same thing for Julian Larry when it comes to Tyrese Hunter, making him their true point guard, and maybe that's the sign for Tyrese. But could they both benefit from another year at Texas? Yes, but that is also up to them, and whether or not with Mitchell the confidence, or with Hunter the ability to slide into a different role than he's used to. Can they make that change and truly buy into their role to make enough of a difference for this Texas team? That's the big question. When you have a guy like Trey Johnson coming in, who had a fantastic performance at the McDonald's All-American game, was great throughout the entire weekend in practice too, it's going to make things difficult because, guys, I don't know what you think about Trey Johnson, but this is a guy who legitimately could be the number one scoring option for Texas next season.
The best month of the year is here, which is why you need to know that we are partnered with BetMGM. We'll be using BetMGM lines for making all of our picks and predictions, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's the best part. All you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your hard-earned money to get it. This is what you have to do to make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll get up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. Most importantly, we have some fun stuff coming up for the rest of the NCAA tournament. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boost, and the thing that I love the most, a nice little parlay boost, as well as a ridiculous array of prop bets for anything that you could possibly imagine betting on. From odds on getting to the Final Four to national championship futures, I'm calling it right now. BetMGM is the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app. Use that code FIELD and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the pod in any podcast app. Like and share the YouTube videos that you enjoy. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show.
I mean, this is what I was about to say. I really think that Texas, this staff regards Trey Johnson as like a Kevin Durant level player at Texas.
And he very well may be.
He might be. I mean, he's one of the most talented players in the recruiting class, and he looked good in the All-American game, and he looked good at the Hoop Summit this past weekend. He is going to be a top 3 scoring option, no matter who they finish with in the portal. Like, if Jordan Pope commits this week, Trey Johnson's still a top 3 scoring option. I think the Tyrese Hunter replacement was Tremont Mark. I think you're right on the Dylan Mitchell replacement being Jason Kent. I think Julian Larry right now is the starting point guard next year. Maybe that changes if they bring in Pope. Kendall Weaver just fits better off the bench as an energy guy. He's not going to start next year. And they're still looking for their rim defending big guy. Trey Johnson's going to play a huge role on next year's team. Like, that's a given. I mean, they can't, like, maybe AJ Storr would be the level of scorer that they could add in the portal of Trey Johnson. And I'm not even sure Texas is still recruiting AJ Storr. Like, there are much higher bidders. And I think he's going to be on a lineup by the end of the week. So, really quick, well, not really quick, because this is going to be like the meat of the show. We're going to talk some visits this week. Texas is allegedly going to have between 5 and 8 guys on campus this week, which is super exciting. Even with the past 3 commits, we talked about how they have 3 to 4 open roster spots. And that's just right now. Like, I think that Tyrese Hunter and Dylan Mitchell are pretty much as good as gone. And then they have the 2 open roster spots outside of them. And then I think, Zarek Onyema, Devin Pryor, they have a 3-star recruit signed for next year. Like, one of those 3 will probably peace out. And so Texas is looking to build a deep team. I think that they've had shallow or thin teams the last couple of seasons. And so they want some depth, and I can't blame them. On Tuesday, Jordan Pope is visiting. He's a transfer from Oregon State. That's super exciting. High-scoring guy. He's also a lead guard. And so Texas could plug him right into the starting lineup, hit some big shots last year for the Beavers. He is also visiting Texas A&M the next day. And so that will be a recruitment to watch very carefully. We're recording this middle of the day on Monday. So if any of these guys commit between now and the show going up, I'm very online. Like, I know when these guys commit, so I don't want to look like a big idiot here. But Texas is supposed to have Brandon Garrison on campus by the end of the week from Oklahoma State. They are supposed to have Pharrell Payne from Minnesota on campus by the end of the week. He's a rim defending big man. And guys, 2 names that really intrigue me who they are recruiting. Actually, 4 names who really intrigue me. Rylan Griffin from Alabama, they're trying to get on campus. Aaron Bradshaw from Kentucky, they're trying to get on campus. But 2 names that aren't being talked about a whole lot who I'm very interested in. Texas is recruiting Robbie Avila from Indiana State, and they're recruiting Danny Wolf from Yale, a pair of mid-major big men who would plug right into that 5 spot for Texas. Zach, I want to hear your thoughts. Which of those names that I mentioned intrigue you, and why?
Well, I mean, I feel like as any college basketball fan, Robbie Avila would be just the most kind of fun. He would bring a crowd, and he's also a hooper. Like, he can play. 2 of his teammates are here, so you almost kind of have to assume that he's going to be looking here at the very, very minimum. Might check out campus. I love Pharrell Payne, 6'9" center, but he's big. He's 255, and he averaged 1.5 blocks a game. I mean, you're talking about getting a rim protector. This team lacks that at the moment with just Shedrick on the roster. You got a guy who plays bigger than his actual size. He's a great rebounder. Just finished his sophomore year, so he has 2 years of experience at Minnesota. And I mean, I said it before, 1.5 blocks a game. Who on Texas had that last year? Dylan Mitchell might have flashed us, yeah, but it's like, the inside defense. I feel like the Sioux last year kind of got dragged out a bit. Shedrick was awful off the pick and rolls last season. So a guy like Bradshaw who can really sit down in the rim and protect is something. I mean, Texas doesn't have that on the roster at the moment. And then you also look at a guy like Brandon Garrison. Hard not to look at him. Just finished a freshman year and flashing a lot of potential. 5 points, 5 rebounds, also 1.5 blocks. He plays tall, 6'11". It's a generous 6'11".
Very generous. Very generous.
I think he was listed at 6'8" or something out of high school. So I don't know. Maybe he had a little growth spurt. But the stats don't really show the kind of player Brandon Garrison is. He's a great team player. He was a heavy contributor to the Oklahoma State offense last year. So I mean, Robbie, Brandon, Farrell, all those guys would seem like great fits at the 40.
I have a little wish list here, fellas, of like three guys that I think Texas would greatly benefit from having. high at the top in like 8 different highlighter colors is Brandon Garrison. I've been pumping this train, and Jason can attest to it. Zach can attest to it in the group chat for like the past week. Like, hey, Brandon Garrison is a must get for Texas. And, he's leaning a little bit Oklahoma at the moment, visited the Sooners this past weekend. What's big is that he came out of the weekend uncommitted. I think Oklahoma not being able to finish the job over the weekend says something. If he gets to campus at Texas, I think that's going to be really telling. And Rodney Terry and his staff have a great opportunity to try and make up some ground there because he's an Oklahoma City guy, went to high school in Oklahoma City. So getting him to go just a little bit out of state to come to Austin would be huge. That's your interior presence guy for Texas, right? There's just no way he's 6'11", maybe like 6'9", closing in on 6'10". But he's a guy who doesn't show up in the box score necessarily, like Zach was talking about. This is a guy who can get the job done for you inside the paint. Texas needs a good rebounder, and he is that. And they could use him at the rim too as a shot blocker. So everything that they're looking for in a physical big man, Brandon Garrison has, and it kind of fits the mold of the way that Texas has played with their big guys in the last few years. They don't have a lot of size on the interior. It's been those guys who are 6'9", 6'10", in that range, not necessarily your 7-footers or your 7'1". So Garrison fits that mold. I think he'd be a great fit. And then Jordan Pope from Oregon State obviously would be a fantastic add, a prolific scorer. I know he's leaning towards Texas, so good sign there for the Longhorns. That would be great, adding his scoring prowess and giving Trey Johnson, taking a little bit off of his play. There's a lot from, to give a freshman like that. He can certainly handle it. But Rodney Terry and the staff have done a good job of surrounding this roster with experience so that Johnson comes in and has veteran guys around him. I think that was another thing that Kirk and Cedric talked about on the Austin American Statesman podcast. I don't know what the name of that. I think it's like On Second Thought or something.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah,
and then
name, but
there you go. And then the last guy that I've got is Rylan Griffin from Alabama, a guy with a lot of potential, great scorer this past season. I mean, everybody could score last year for Alabama, but great scorer for Alabama this past season, a lot of potential. He's a Texas guy. I went to Richardson. So those are the targets I'd like to see. But Aaron Bradshaw was kind of recent, Jason. I was not expecting that name. I know he's leaning Ohio State, but I think that would kind of be pretty fun too if Texas were able to pull that off. I don't see it happening, but that would be fun.
He'd be
That's
the
the
highest
beauty.
rated player. Yeah, we can go there.
Sorry, that's just like the beauty of the portal, right? It's like
Yeah,
Yeah,
you never
the
know.
wish list, and it's like like you can imagine them there. It's tough. Like for any, and especially for Rodney Terry in the season he's going into, you can almost like think of it as a make or break year for Rodney.
It
Like
is.
last year objectively was a successful season with the injuries they had, and they still took Tennessee to the final minute. Tough 3 by A. Smith, missed layup by Dessou, but this is a big year for Rodney, and he's off to a great start. It's just about, who can he get next? And for us, the nerds of the program, we just want to see anyone possible. Like Bradshaw, number 5 guy in his class last year, kind of got injured, but I mean, like that's the beauty of it. Robbie Avila, right? It's like what can we expect?
I think that if it'll be big to see who Texas has on campus this week, it'll be big to see who Texas decides, they're going to make promises to, because they have 3 guys who are committed now. And I also think that we're going to have another surprise commitment, because Texas has been moving very quietly in the portal. And it's a good thing, because loose lips sink ships. And in today's day and age, you don't want to miss out on a transfer because of fan backlash. We may have a situation like this. I think that Texas was trying to sneak Pop Isaacs onto campus either this weekend or next weekend. And now it's not so much of a secret anymore that they're recruiting him. And the fans aren't happy. Say what you will about Pop Isaacs. I haven't, been keeping up with his off the court situation enough to comment on it. But Pop Isaacs, the player, would be a pretty good fit at Texas, in my opinion. He'd be a pretty good fit. As for other guys who they've been recruiting, I know that going into last weekend, they liked where they sat with Xavier Amos, the forward out of NIU, 2 years of eligibility remaining, Chicago guy. I don't know how much that changes with Jason Kent. They have very similar sort of builds, and so I don't know if he's going to be out of the picture. I sort of expect that with Kerry Booth. Texas made his Final Five from Notre Dame. I think that he's going to end up going to Illinois, somewhere where he can get promised a little bit more playing time. And then just looking at this list of players who they're recruiting. Oh, Rytis Petratus from Air Force did not make it onto campus this weekend. He was supposed to visit. He did not make it onto campus. He is still an option to visit. And so he would be a nice add. Good shooter, big forward who you could play at the wing position. And so, that would be a nice add for Rodney Terry and staff. It's very interesting sort of seeing what they're trying to do next year. They're obviously prioritizing tempo, size, some of the things that they've struggled with. I mean, they struggled to play quick last year, and they didn't have the size advantage on damn near any team who they played. And so it's nice seeing them address the things that like we all sat in front of the TV looking at, like, come on, like, how do you not recruit more guys who can rebound? How do you not, have this positional length? And now they're actually recruiting it. And so it's super nice. Does anyone have any more thoughts on what Texas has done, what they're going to do? Any guys who we haven't talked about? I know that Texas has been involved on Malik Mack from Harvard. He's not out of the picture, but he's looking, more and more like a Georgetown Hoya every day. Any other thoughts on the transfer portal? Texas is in it for just about every one of the biggest guys, which is, no surprise, but it's nice seeing them actually land some of them.
Yeah, I really want to harp on that comment you made about Texas having size. I mean, 1 through 5, they're going to be so much bigger than they were last season, and that's massive. It's gonna pay off a lot more. Obviously, you were willing to sacrifice the size when you have the scoring prowess of a guy like Max Abmas, right? But now you can still get that same offensive arsenal as a total 5. You're not going to replicate what Max Abmas was able to do, obviously, but as a starting 5 unit, if Julian Larry is the smallest guy out there, he's 6'3". Like that's your shortest guy, and Trey Johnson's a big guard. I know a part of his brand is Big Guard U. Like it's going to be a much needed change of pace for Texas to be able to have that size. Will it translate to rebounding? That's the question. Like, will Texas become a team that when you look at them, you say, okay, this team can rebound really well? Because that's something that you have to teach. And that's something that has to get implemented by this coaching staff. So can they become a better rebounding team is my question. But I think it's also favorable that Texas goes to the SEC now. I think that had Texas stayed in the Big 12, it would have been a little bit more difficult for them this season, and maybe Rodney Terry gets put under the microscope a little bit harsher. But they go to an easier basketball conference, not necessarily, the easiest conference, I would say, but it's very top heavy. And the teams at the top and the programs at the top have had a lot of movement over the summer, with John Calipari going from Kentucky to Arkansas, and Mark Pope coming over from BYU to fill the spots at Kentucky. So those are 2 first-year guys in powerhouse programs, and that's going to open the door for Texas, I think. When you think of SEC teams that are going to be at the top, obviously Tennessee is going to be there, Alabama is going to be there, but you can make a case that Texas is a top 5 team going into the SEC next year, and I'm not sure you would have been able to make that case had the Longhorns stayed in the Big 12. So a lot to like, and things going right timing-wise for Texas too, going into a huge season in a new conference.
Yeah, I just think great point, Tommy. I think you also have to look at the dynamic of what the team is right now. And I think that dynamic on paper looks to be surrounded by Trey Johnson. You got a guy who's coming in with some high expectations, what he did at the McDonald's game, what he did in his senior year. I just think you're seeing that in the portal, picking up Kent, picking up Larry, Mark. You're almost building around Trey Johnson, and you're trying to find guys that will help him succeed, because you got your shooter, and now you're trying to pick up rebounders. Kent had averaged 8 boards a game last year. Shedrick was, not the most active guy coming off the bench towards the end of the year, but him coming back is big for the program. And then you're looking at a lot of big guys in the portal. You're looking at Garrison, you're looking at Payne, you're looking at Bradshaw. So it's just about finding the right roles. It's not about finding the best players for the team. It's about finding the right roles for the team. Because if you have too many if you have too many guys who want the ball in their hands, then you lose the right dynamic. Like that was the problem last year with Abmas, Hunter, Ace Smith, Hunter, and Dessou. It's like you got too many guys who want the ball in their hands, and then you got guys taking bad shots, and you got losses. So it's just about finding the right guys for the roles you want to fill. And I think that Texas has been doing that so far, and I hope they continue to do it.
They need one more big man. They need a 7-footer.
Yeah,
Give me
for
Danny
sure.
Wolf. He's number one. He's number one on my wish list right now. And they're trying to get him on campus. He's visiting North Carolina on Monday. And if he doesn't, he is somebody whose recruitment timeline should be watched very closely. Because if he doesn't commit to North Carolina, he may take a visit to Texas, which would be huge. I believe he visited Michigan over the weekend. He didn't commit there. The other school in on him is Indiana, but they seem to be trending for Umar Ballo, who I'm kind of surprised Texas isn't recruiting because he has a lot of what Texas needs. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying, Zach. I think Texas is sort of building a super team of portal guys to surround Trey Johnson and maximize on the 1 year that he's on campus. And last year, the NIL budget was rumored to be around $4 million. I think that they're going to exceed that. The biggest fish is yet to come, though. Tremont Mark was pretty big, but the biggest fish is yet to come. I think that you think of the Max A. Smith, Marcus Carr level transfer portal pickup. They're still waiting on that one. And so that'll hopefully come in the next couple of days for Texas. Everything is fluid in the portal. Everything moves quickly. It's the off season that isn't even an off season. We're all just here refreshing Twitter and Discord and Reddit and all the VIP forums just to gather as much information as possible. I love it. I wouldn't trade it for anything. So that'll do it for today's episode of the Hook 'em Hoops podcast. Zach, thank you for joining us. Your first episode as our new co-host of the podcast. Great to have you on board. Tommy, great as always talking hoops with you. I'm Jason Kinander. It's been a pleasure talking to all of y'all. We'll be back soon with more portal updates and hopefully a couple new